The pediatric oncology wing of the Boston Hospital was a place of jarring contradictions. Sunlight streamed through massive, sealed windows, glinting off the polished linoleum floors and the stainless steel edges of medical carts. The air, scrubbed clean and smelling faintly of antiseptic, hummed with the quiet, rhythmic beeping of machines that promised life but often only measured its slow retreat. This sterile efficiency stood in stark contrast to the vibrant, crayon-drawn pictures of suns with smiling faces and lopsided houses taped to the walls, desperate splashes of childhood innocence against a backdrop of clinical reality. Parents moved through the hallways like ghosts, their faces etched with a silent, weary tension. It was a place built for healing, for miracles, yet the unspoken truth of its purpose, managing the unimaginable, hung heavy in the quiet, a constant, suffocating weight on everyone who walked its corridors. In the middle of this suspended reality was Claire, a volunteer who seemed to belong more to the world of corporate boardrooms than a children's playroom. At 29, she was the picture of controlled success. Dressed in a subtly expensive cashmere sweater and tailored slacks, her dark hair pulled back in a flawless knot. She moved with a quiet efficiency, methodically organizing a bin of plastic blocks by color, her motions precise and detached. To any observer, she was a capable, kind woman doing a good deed. But her eyes, whenever they weren't focused on the task at hand, held a profound emptiness, a carefully guarded loneliness that her professional achievements could never touch. She was here every Saturday, not out of a deep well of empathy, but to settle an old, unspoken debt with her past, treating her volunteer work as just another project to be managed perfectly from a safe, emotional distance. She was just finishing with the blocks when the voices drifted in from the hallway, low and measured. Claire froze, her hand hovering over a red block. It was two doctors speaking to a man she vaguely recognized as the father from room 3B. Their tone was professionally gentle, the kind of practiced softness that precedes devastating news. Claire didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the pristine acoustics of the corridor carried their words with chilling clarity. They spoke of failed protocols, of cellular resistance, of the body's refusal to respond any longer. Then came the sentence, delivered with a quiet finality that seemed to suck all the air from the hallway. "I'm sorry, but her time is limited," one of the doctors said. "Maybe 6 months. Our focus now is on comfort." The words weren't just spoken. They were a verdict, an execution of hope. Claire peered around the edge of the doorframe and saw the father, Ben, react. He didn't shout or break down in a storm of tears. Instead, his body simply gave way, slumping against the sterile white wall as if his bones had dissolved. His shoulders shook with a silent, violent sob that seemed to tear through him from the inside out. In that one devastating image of a broken man holding himself together, the dam inside Claire shattered. She saw not just a stranger's grief, but a visceral echo of her own past. The same helpless agony she had buried for over a decade. The professional volunteer vanished, and in her place was a girl, watching her worst memory play out again. It's moments like these, so raw and real, that remind us why these stories must be told. If you feel that, please consider subscribing so we can continue to share them. The image of Ben's collapse followed Claire down the hallway, a silent film of grief replaying in her mind. It wasn't just his pain she saw, it was a ghost of her own. She was suddenly 16 again, standing in a corridor just like this one, listening to a doctor's hushed, apologetic tones delivering a similar verdict for her younger brother, David. The scent of antiseptic, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum, the suffocating quiet. It all came rushing back, a tidal wave of memory she had spent 13 years building a dam to hold back. She reached her car in the parking garage and sat gripping the steering wheel, not starting the engine. as the carefully constructed facade of the successful marketing executive crumbled, leaving behind only the helpless teenager who couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. Days later, drawn by an impulse she couldn't name, she found herself hesitating outside room 3B. Peeking inside, she saw the subjects of the hallway's tragic verdict. Lily was a small, pale doll propped up by pillows, her wispy brown hair a testament to the war being waged inside her body, yet her eyes, large and luminous, were fixed on a sketchbook in her lap, her small hand guiding a purple crayon with intense concentration. Beside her sat Ben, reading from a worn copy of a children's book. His voice was a low, steady murmur, a lifeline of normalcy in a sea of medical beeps. But Claire could see the tremor in his hands and the profound exhaustion etched into every line on his face. She continued to watch them from a distance for the rest of the week, her volunteer tasks feeling hollow and meaningless. She saw Ben patiently coaxing Lily to eat, celebrating a single spoonful of soup as if it were a grand victory. She saw him reading the same story over and over because it was Lily's favorite. His voice never betraying his own soul-crushing boredom or despair. He was a portrait of relentless, unconditional love, a man holding his entire world together with sheer force of will. Claire recognized the performance because her own parents had given it for David. It was a heroic, heartbreaking act of pretending everything was okay for the sake of a child who knew, on some level, that it wasn't. One afternoon, she found Ben in the small, sterile family lounge, staring blankly at a vending machine. The moment felt charged, an opportunity she knew she had to take. She walked up to him, her own voice sounding foreign to her ears as she bypassed the useless pleasantries. "I overheard the doctors the other day," she began, her tone soft but direct. "I'm not going to tell you I'm sorry. I know words don't work." He flinched, but didn't turn away. "I want to ask you something. What is Lily's biggest dream? Not what she can do in here. What is the one thing she dreams of seeing, of feeling if she could go anywhere?" Ben stared at her, his expression a mix of suspicion and bewilderment. He seemed ready to brush her off. Another stranger offering a brand of pity he didn't want, but something in her gaze, a shared understanding of this specific kind of hell, held him there. His shoulders slumped, a fraction of his armor falling away. "The ocean," he said, his voice barely a whisper, thick with emotion. "She's never seen it. She has this book with pictures, and she says she wants to feel the sand and see the real-life fish. She wants to hear what the world's heartbeat sounds like." He looked away, as if ashamed of admitting to a dream so impossibly far from their reality. The simple, profound purity of that wish landed in Claire's chest like an anchor. It wasn't a request for a cure or a miracle. It was a plea for one perfect, tangible moment of life. In that instant, the world of marketing campaigns, profit margins, and corporate ladders seemed like a meaningless fiction. Her life, so full of accomplishments, felt utterly empty. A new kind of purpose ignited within her, fierce and absolute. She couldn't save her brother, but she could give this little girl the ocean. She would move heaven and earth and every dollar in her bank account to make sure Lily heard the world's heartbeat. Her first move was to schedule a meeting with Dr. Evans, Lily's oncologist. He was a kind man with tired eyes who had seen too much. He listened with professional patience as Claire, armed with a preliminary plan, made her case. He didn't dismiss her outright, but his response was a gentle wall of medical reality. "Claire, her immune system is non-existent," he explained. "The risk of infection, the physical stress of travel. Our focus here is on comfort, on managing her pain. Taking her out of this controlled environment would be, to be frank, irresponsible." His no was wrapped in compassion, but it was a no all the same. Walking out of that office, Claire felt a familiar cold rage settle in her stomach. It was the same logic that had kept David confined to his room, the same well-meaning caution that prioritized a sterile, managed decline over a messy, joyful life. The system was built to prevent the worst-case scenario, but in doing so, it often prevented the best-case scenarios too. It's a battle so many families face, fighting for a moment of beauty against a fortress of rules. We believe these moments are worth fighting for, and if you do too, please consider subscribing. It helps us continue to tell the stories of those who fight. But Claire was no longer the helpless teenager. She was a woman who knew how to dismantle problems and build solutions. She spent the next 2 weeks on a new campaign, her most important one yet. She researched private medical transport companies, contacted palliative care nurses who specialized in out-of-hospital excursions, and found a beachfront rental with wheelchair access. She used her executive skills to create a comprehensive logistical plan, complete with contingency measures and medical protocols that even Dr. Evans would have to respect. She was not asking for permission anymore. She was presenting an airtight, undeniable plan of action. During this time, her relationship with Lily blossomed. She was no longer just a volunteer. She was Claire, the friend who brought strange and wonderful things. One day, it was a large conch shell. She held it to Lily's ear, and the little girl's eyes went wide. "It's the ocean," Lily whispered in awe, a radiant smile transforming her tired face. "It's singing to me." In that moment, watching Lily's pure joy, Claire felt a sharp, terrifying pang in her heart. It was the echo of her love for David, and the paralyzing fear of feeling that kind of loss again gripped her so tightly she could barely breathe. Ben watched the transformation in his daughter with a cautious, blooming hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He saw a spark in Lily's eyes that had long been dimmed by pain and medication. He started to open up to Claire, sharing stories of the mischievous, energetic girl Lily had been before the illness. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, two people bound by their love for this child, finding solace in shared silence and quiet conversation. He saw that Claire's mission wasn't about charity. It was something deeper, something personal. He began to trust her, not just with his daughter's dream, but with his own fragile hope. The final piece fell into place when Claire, through a network of contacts, found a pediatric palliative care specialist in a neighboring city who believed that quality of life meant more than the absence of pain. After a lengthy video call where Claire presented her meticulous plan, the doctor agreed to sign off, providing the medical authority needed to override the hospital's concerns. Holding the signed documents in her hand in the hospital parking lot that night, Claire felt a tremor of fear and exhilaration. She was stepping off a cliff, willingly walking toward the certainty of heartbreak, all for a little girl and a promise of the ocean. The specialized ambulance, more a mobile ICU than a transport vehicle, rolled to a silent stop at the edge of the boardwalk. The journey from Boston had been a nerve-wracking ballet of logistics and quiet prayers. Every bump in the road, a potential crisis. Now, the salty air, thick with the scent of the ocean and fried clams from a distant stand, seeped into the sterile environment, a welcome intruder. Ben carefully unbuckled Lily from her transport seat, while Claire directed the private nurse. Ensuring the portable oxygen and monitors were ready, transferring Lily into the wide-wheeled beach chair was a delicate operation, a slow, careful dance of profound love and medical necessity. As they finally pushed onto the sand, Lily's head, which had been resting listlessly against the headrest, lifted. Her eyes, wide with a silent, overwhelming awe, took in the vast expanse of blue and the endless rhythm of the waves. It was the first time Claire had seen her look truly, completely alive. They found a quiet spot, far from the scattered families enjoying the late afternoon. The sun, a great orange sphere, was beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, casting a shimmering golden path across the water. Ben gently lifted his daughter from the chair, her body feeling as light and fragile as a bird's, and carried her to the water's edge. He sat down in the damp sand, holding her securely in his lap as the first gentle wave of the Atlantic foamed over their feet. Lily gasped, not in fear, but in pure, unadulterated delight. A laugh, weak but clear and bright, escaped her lips, a sound that cut through the rhythmic hush of the surf. It was a sound Ben hadn't heard in months, and he buried his face in her thin hair, his shoulders shaking with silent, grateful sobs. Claire stood a few feet away, a silent guardian to the moment, her heart aching with a pain so beautiful it was almost unbearable. After a few minutes, Lily turned her small head, her gaze searching for and finding Claire. Her eyes, which held the impossible depth of an old soul, were clear and luminous in the fading light. "You didn't have to do this," she said, her voice a soft whisper that the ocean breeze seemed to carry directly to Claire's heart. "But you came, like an angel." The simple, innocent words, spoken with such profound sincerity, were the final, gentle pressure on a dam that had been holding back 13 years of unshed tears. It didn't crack. It disintegrated. A raw, ragged sob tore from Claire's throat, a sound of such profound grief that it startled even herself. Her legs gave out, and she sank to her knees in the cool sand, the perfect, controlled facade of her life dissolving into the tide, leaving only the broken 16-year-old girl she had tried so hard to bury. Ben, seeing her collapse, settled Lily gently against a large pillow they'd brought, murmuring that he'd be right back. He moved to Claire's side, his presence a quiet anchor in her storm. He didn't speak, just knelt beside her, a silent witness to her unraveling, and then the story poured out of her, a torrent of words choked with guilt and sorrow. She told him about David, about the shared hospital room, the beeping machines and the suffocating helplessness. "I thought if I could just give her this one perfect day," she confessed, her voice breaking, gesturing toward the peaceful child and the magnificent sunset. "I thought if I could fix this, it would somehow make up for not being able to save him. It wasn't for her, it was for me." The admission hung in the air, a raw and painful truth that she was finally giving voice to. He listened without judgment, his own face etched with a deep, knowing sorrow. When her confession finally subsided into exhausted silence, Ben didn't offer comforting lies or empty platitudes. He simply reached out and pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly as the last of her strength gave way. There, on the edge of the continent, with the setting sun as their witness, they were no longer a benefactor and a father in need. They were two wounded souls, their shared experience of love and loss creating a bond stronger than any contract or promise. Claire finally understood. Love wasn't about preventing the pain of goodbye. It was about the profound, terrifying courage to say hello, to connect, to cherish the moment, no matter how fleeting it might be. In Ben's embrace, holding the weight of his grief and her own, she finally began to heal. Lily's final months were not a slow fade in a sterile room, but a vibrant tapestry of experiences woven with urgency and love. Claire and Ben transformed her life into a series of small, perfect moments. They brought a cellist to her bedside to play her favorite lullabies, filling the quiet air with music. They turned her room into a butterfly conservatory for an afternoon, with delicate winged creatures fluttering around her, landing on her outstretched finger. She didn't pass away tethered to machines, but in the quiet of a sunlit room in a small house they rented by a lake, held in Ben's arms while Claire read her one last story about the ocean. Her departure was a profound sorrow, a silence that felt impossibly vast. But it was a silence layered with the echoes of laughter and the deep, abiding peace of a life, however short, that had been lived to its fullest. In the quiet, heavy days that followed, Claire and Ben found their way through the grief together, their shared loss forging a bond that was unbreakable. The pain was a physical presence, but it was also a catalyst. One evening, sitting on the porch of the lake house, Claire looked at the corporate resignation letter she had already drafted on her phone. There was no hesitation, only a profound sense of clarity. The world of marketing reports and profit margins was a ghost from another life. She turned to Ben and spoke of an idea, a way to keep Lily's light from ever going out. They would use Claire's inheritance, her business acumen, and their shared, painful wisdom to build something new. They would call it the Sunflower Foundation, named after the lopsided, smiling flowers Lily loved to draw in her sketchbook, a symbol of turning towards the light. 3 years later, the foundation's headquarters was a place of impossible warmth. It was nothing like the hospital. The walls were painted in bright, cheerful colors and covered in a sprawling mural of photographs. Dozens of smiling children looked out from the frames, each picture a story of a dream fulfilled. A ride in a hot air balloon, a chance to meet a hero, a day spent as a firefighter. Claire and Ben, now partners in life as well as in purpose, stood before the wall, their hands intertwined. The deep sadness in their eyes had softened into a gentle wisdom. They had built more than an organization. They had created a legacy, a testament to the idea that a single life, no matter how brief, could ripple outwards and touch countless others, transforming grief into a powerful and enduring force for good. A small bell chimed, announcing the arrival of a new family. A mother and father stood hesitantly in the doorway, their faces etched with the familiar map of fear and exhaustion, a young boy holding tightly to his father's hand. Claire turned, and the smile she offered was no longer a mask of professional courtesy, but a genuine, open invitation, radiating an empathy born from her own healed wounds. She walked towards them, ready to listen, ready to help, ready to begin the cycle of compassion all over again. It's a powerful reminder that out of the deepest sorrow, the most beautiful legacies can grow. We are so grateful you've been with us for this journey, and by subscribing, you help ensure these stories of hope and transformation can continue to be told.